Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of CJ's Corner. Today we're going to do something a little different. Today we are going to answer a question from a viewer about what I call the catalyst or the inciting incident. But before we get started, let me remind you that we are here to help you learn how to tell stories and craft stories that can captivate, engage, and influence your audience. So hopefully you'll learn a couple tips today that will allow you to do that. But it's time to get started. Okay. So today, as I mentioned, we are going to talk about the catalyst. This is an interesting topic for us. And it's a topic that people don't always talk about. You know, they're interested in getting their story out there, but they never necessarily think of what gets their story started. Why is it that a person should be listening to them? You know, what is the thing that engages the mind that says, oh, I got to hear the rest of this story? In other words, the catalyst is the item that gets the story moving. Now, some will get into more detail and talk about the fact that it's actually the action plot line that gets going, not any subplots, and that's fine. There's numerous subplots. We don't have to deal with that at this time, especially when we're talking about a short, simple story. Now, keep in mind, if you're talking about this from a work standpoint, you might be talking about the fact that there's this common problem out there that no one seems to know how to solve. If you're talking to your family about a lesson learned, maybe the catalyst is the problematic circumstance that occurred because the child had done something wrong, or someone got hurt and you want to help them to understand where things go from there. The catalyst could be something as simple as when you're watching a movie and the main character suddenly gets a letter or a phone call, whatever it might be. Not only is it a catalyst because it changes things and moves things forward, just like in the terminology used for science, but it's also called an inciting incident because it actually incites something. It forces the story to start to move. And that's why we usually call it the inciting incident over the catalyst. However, I like the term catalyst from time to time because you know that when something is added to something else, there is a reaction. There is numerous things that can happen. I worked with a university professor helping her build an animation for a electronic teaching tool that she was creating. During that process, she told me about elephant toothpaste. Have you ever seen elephant toothpaste? It's when they take two different chemicals that seem like they won't do much in of themselves, but one of them is a catalyst to the other. And the moment you mix it, all of a sudden, if you're using a glass jar or a flask is what I meant. It will immediately start the chain reaction and it will shoot foam up through the shape of whatever that cylinder might be, or the cup, or whatever. And that toothpaste, as they call it, it shoots up and up and up. It can hit the sky. It can hit the ceiling. It just goes whoosh and starts coming out. And it is just foam. It converts the liquids into a foam that just rises very rapidly. So that catalyst caused something to happen. So in story, we have to have that inciting incident to be that catalyst to get the story moving. Now, more specifically, let's bring up the question that was asked. Oops, wrong one. There we go. How does being needed by community relate to living in freedom? Okay, I suppose I need to give you some context. So here's the context. She watched this 60-second video. I'm going to play it again for you, although you might have seen it last week already, but here it is again.
Years ago, my son-in-law helped me better understand his life and tribe. In my studies, I learned the phrase wananichi, meaning he who is needed by the people. It was then that I realized my path to bring people back to the true ways of freedom. We have the right to make our own life decisions about our education, career, medical care, spirituality, and so much more. Don't allow others to force or leverage your free choices. Live in freedom.
So that's the video. Now that's what she was referencing. She had watched that and she decided that the whole concept of having a community need you was important. She thought there was something about the freedom that she didn't understand, living in freedom. She said, how does being needed by community relate to living in freedom? So here's the thing. It really doesn't. And it doesn't have to. Because the whole point about the learning that information about the Indian term, that was all a catalyst for the story itself. It doesn't have to be directly related. Here's what Andrea Gigline, there we go. Andrea Gigline. Oh, I should work on names better. Andrea Gigline says, "You never know when one seemingly unrelated event may become the catalyst that sets off a chain of synchronistic events." And that's what we have here, is we have me learning that term about how the community needs a person. That was the catalyst for me to realize that, I need to do what I need to do. I need to be me for the community. And the thing that's impressed upon my heart right now is that I need to encourage them to live in freedom. And I went on a little bit in detail, just briefly, because it's only a 60-second show. But I went a little bit into detail talking about the kinds of freedom. Because when we say live in freedom, you can ask the question, well, how do you define freedom? Or what kind of freedom are you talking about? Are you talking about freedom from responsibility? Nope, that's not what I was talking about. I was talking about freedom of choice, because I talked about the different kinds of choices we have. The choices for career and spirituality and education and medical care. And those are all choices that we get to make. And the whole thing about living in freedom was just stating, do not let others take those choices away from you. Those are our God-given rights. We get those choices. No one else knows us like we know us. So therefore, we are the best decider of what those choices need to be in our life. So to hold on to your choices, to step up and say, I am making those choices, no one else, that is living in freedom based on my message. But for some reason, the person asking the question thought that the message wasn't clear because she couldn't figure out what the catalyst had to do with that. Now, if I play back just that one segment, you'll see that the catalyst was all about me just having that aha moment. And I talked about what triggered that aha moment for me. That's all a catalyst was. It was just to get it started. Catalysts or inciting incidents just get your story started. And again, as this quote here reflects, it says, seemingly unrelated event. Now, clearly, there has to be some kind of relationship, but not necessarily a relationship that the audience needs to understand. It just needs to be one that the writer or the author needs to understand. In my case, I understood it because By realizing that the community needs me, I had to think about, well, who am I? What do I stand for? What's important to me? And one of the greatest things that I hold dear to my heart is that we as people have our choices. We shouldn't have to live based on someone else's choices. We shouldn't have to become slaves to other people's decisions. Instead, we should be free to live out our choices. We're adults, right? We need to be able to pick and choose what's best for us and go after that thing. If we suddenly were in a lineup and someone said, okay, you're going to be a gas station attendant, you're going to be a secretary, you're going to be... Someone else's choice for me might not match my activities, might not match my desires, it might not match who I am, what skills and techniques I know and understand. We have to hold true to us making the best decisions for who we are. With all this stuff going on with the pandemic and stuff, and there's one side of the group saying, oh, all kinds of weird things are happening here and they're not telling us the truth and this drug isn't right, and another side is saying you have to take the drug because it'll hurt the community otherwise. And I can name at least 20 arguments on both sides because I've heard them all. The bottom line is most of us don't know who to trust anymore, so we just pick one and we firmly hold to it. Well, the idea here is to actually live in freedom. It doesn't matter what other people's choices are. What matters is what's best for me. And I need to have the freedom to make a choice based on what is best for me, just as you do. Our choices might be identical. They might be opposing. It doesn't matter. There is a depth of understanding that each person has, an innate value that they have the right to make their decisions for their life. And you have that same innate value that I have, or I have that same innate value that you have. In either case, we have to respect our audience. We have to let the audience know that in the case of this message, that you have choices to make. Live in freedom by you making that choice. Don't let someone else force it upon you. So again, going back to the whole issue of the catalyst though, is it related? Yeah, it's related as far as how my train of thought worked. But is it necessary to understand the message? No. In fact, if we start the story after the catalyst, you would understand the same message, because I would say, here are these things that you have to choose. And to live in freedom, you need to make that choice, and you shouldn't let someone else make that choice. That's what the message is after the catalyst. Now, why is the catalyst there? Because it brings the emotional aspect into the story. So if you're having a hard time understanding what the message is, it's because you're caught up in the emotional side. The emotional side was just to bring the passion to the fact that there's value with you making your own choices. Without it, it would just be a factual comment that you have the right to make your own choices. So the catalyst gets the thing rolling. And that's what it's all about. In writing, screenplays, books, we call it the inciting incident most of the time, because it incites the next moment. It gets the story going. So in either case, whatever you want to call it, whether it's the catalyst or the inciting incident, whether it's a business problem that you're stating to get a story or conversation going about a solution, whether it's something that you want to express to get a dialogue going with your family so that they learn a moral lesson, whatever it might be, you need that starter. It's like that match having to be lit before the bonfire can rage. So that's all I have for today. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode, and let me know what your thoughts are. Have a great one.